All right.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this panel on inclusive neuroscience, the NMA perspective. Since the very early days of NMA, inclusivity and bringing computational neuroscience to a larger community and a diverse audience has been like one of the pillars of its existence, actually. We brought people here from across the organization of NMA to talk about their experiences, what their goals were, what they actually were able to achieve, and what are the hopes for future. I'm going to pass the mic to Brad Weibel, our executive vice chair, who's going to start talking about where we started and where we are at and where we are hoping to go. Okay, Brad, it's up to you.
Thank you. Mariam, go ahead to the next slide, please. So what we're looking at here is an image from a Woods Hole course back in 1989. This is a computational neuroscience course that is that has been taught for a long time. And as you'll note when you look at this, there is a very striking lack of racial and gender diversity. And so, you know, one of the things that we've been trying to do for a long time now is to increase the diversity and lower the barriers for accessibility to computational neuroscience. So, Mariam, next slide, please. So one of the core missions of the Neuromatch Academy is to reduce barriers for learning computational neuroscience in a variety of ways. One of the first things that we wanted to address was gender diversity, which has been one of the most striking deficits in computational neuroscience. So one of the ways that we can do this is we can attend to websites like Bias Watch Neuro, which tracks statistics of gender participation across various fields of neuroscience. Go ahead, next. And from this, we see that the current base rate of women in computational neuroscience is around 20%. Go ahead, next. And by the way, while I'm talking about Bias Watch Neuro, I want to put in a plug for their new BioWatch Neuro Award, which is going to be given to departments that do the best job of promoting diversity in a variety of ways. So within the Neuromatch Academy, we worked very hard to basically achieve as best we could diversity across genders. And we did this successfully to some degree. So about a third of our lecturers, TAs, and panelists are all women. And that's something that we're happy about, but of course we can do better. And we did this by emphasizing recruitment of women for all positions, organizers, lecturers, content creators. Go ahead, next. And one of the ways in which we did this was to access lists of diversity, which basically list highly qualified women and people of color in our field. And here's a link that will give you one such list of lists. So there's a large number of these lists, and they're all consolidated here. Go ahead. Another barrier, obviously, is racial diversity. Now, these data are extremely US-centric, but they do highlight the fact that there is a striking lack of racial diversity within the scientific disciplines. We don't have data specifically for computational neuroscience, but across science in general, we see this. And you know, if you look down at the bottom, you'll also see that faculty positions in science are only about 4%. So there's this enormous difference between the number of people who are getting PhDs and the number of people who end up with scientific careers. Next slide. And this is called by many people the Leaky Pipeline, and it refers to the fact that recruiting people from different backgrounds doesn't entirely solve the diversity problem, because they still face a lot of pressures that discourage them from continuing in science. And this is why we see such a striking disparity from underrepresented areas. So the Neuromatch Academy is working in several respects to try to repair some aspects of this leaky pipeline. And there are two ways in which we think about this. One is by giving people computational skills specifically, we make it easier for them to succeed at science, because computational skills, especially in science and neuroscience, are extremely useful for progressing. And the second thing that we want to do is to promote a culture that is inclusive. So we want people from a wide variety of backgrounds to feel as if they belong in science. We don't want this to feel like it's this club that only this select group of people are supposed to be participating in. Next slide. So there are a number of barriers that exist that prevent people from acquiring these skills in general. And in this session, we're going to talk about ways in which Neuromatch Academy has worked at specifically overcoming some of these barriers. So for example, in terms of discrimination, there are a lot of ways in which people from different genders and races and sexual orientations are discriminated against in getting access to these educational resources. And so by lowering the barriers as low as possible, we're trying to make these resources available to as many people as possible. Likewise with economic status, attending summer schools is extremely expensive. You typically have to fly to someplace. They're often they have high tuitions with a limited number of scholarships. So what we wanted to do was to make the fees very accessible for students. And we also wanted to be able to pay TAs a good wage so that they could have a lot of time to work on the TA process. Geography is another huge one, obviously. It's very difficult for people from other continents to fly to a given country to participate. And so by making these materials available online, of course, it's easier for everybody to get to them. And the sort of biggest and most important part of this, I think, is accessibility and communication, right? So there's a lot of people with different ability levels, like, for example, people who might have mobility impairments or are colorblind. And we want to make these materials as accessible as possible to people with a wide range of different kinds of accessibility. So again, online is very useful because it allows people to access these materials in their house without leaving. This is also helpful for people with families who can't leave overnight because they need to help care for loved ones. Another aspect of communication is language. So a lot of science is taught in English, and we're trying to reduce that barrier as well. Next slide. So we've succeeded to some degree. We've got a large number of continents, and well, basically all of the continents except Antarctica are present within our student population, and a large number of countries as well, approximately 60, I believe. In addition, if you look at the proportion of TAs for our course come from a wide diversity of countries as well. So this is something that we're proud of. I'm going to turn now the mic over to my colleagues, Alex and Yoda, to talk about what we've done to actually encourage this wide range of participation.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Alex and Yoda.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how we try to overcome some of the barriers Brad mentioned within the Regional Time Zones and Language Committee. And the first thing we would like to say is that the fact that we have such a plethora of countries is that it is the outcome of a collective and targeted effort by many of us to reach underserved areas. And we did that by identifying first, after the first round of applications of students, we saw from which countries we have very few applications or we have not at all. And we made sure to reach out to every single country of this planet with at least one message or one email. And we realized that the traditional ways of communicating, which is a neuroscience emailing list like the CompNeuro rather, or social media like tweeting, are not enough because many countries don't have reach to them, or neuroscience is not even developed. So we had a big effort to find the departments of different fields, since neuroscience is multidisciplinary as well. So we communicated to departments of physics, math, computer science, biology, and we composed the message in different languages as well, depending on in many cases, on the language of the country. And we realized, one of the things we realized is that not only this is enough, it is most efficient to have a personal communication, to send an email to individuals like professors. Ideally, the most efficient is to make use of our personal network and professors we know, like we did with Greece, Nigeria, Palestine, Costa Rica, Afghanistan. But we also want to use already the network we are building with NMA to expand it even more. Yeah. Alex, please.
Yes, thanks, Jota. So basically, once we made sure that the whole world knew about Neuromatch Academy, we need to make sure ourselves that anyone with the basic skills required to enter the course could practically attend it. And as Brad mentioned, there are a number of barriers to this, and I'm going to talk specifically about three kind of obstacles we try to work on to make it possible for everyone to attend. So the first barrier is timing. So we wanted to make sure that anyone, independently of which time zone it sits in, could attend the school at convenient times. And this required some level of asynchronicity. We cannot have the same timing for everyone on the planet. So we wanted to provide the maximum flexibility for everyone, but still we had to deal with some kind of synchronicity. So next, please, Medina. Yes, I'm going to, oops. Yes, so yes, thank you. So that is the solution we arrived to, which lists like the 9 different options that we provided to the participants given in London time. So the idea was to have that participant would make first a primary choice about what we call the core hours. So basically lectures, tutorials, and the Q&As, because the Q&As had to be somehow synchronous between everyone. And then we had some activity such as the project, which was synchronous, but just within the pods. And so participants had to make a secondary choice as you know, about whether they prefer to do the project before those core hours or after, or half before and half after. So that gives a list of 9 different possibilities that we made sure would provide flexibility and some decent timing for everyone on the planet, and also some flexibility if some people prefer to start later or have some family constraints, and etc. So one thing we need to make sure when we evaluate the school is to make sure that that it actually worked out for everyone, and that because we could not provide the primary choice for everyone, that we had not so many people dropping because of inconvenient timings. Next, please. Yeah, I'm going to go back to go to another of the obstacles we work on, which is language. As we all know, English is the universal language for neuroscience and for all the major international conferences and summer schools. But still there are a lot of people who don't speak English fluently. And because summer school is so intense, we didn't want this to be like an extra effort that would prevent people from benefiting maximally from the experience. So there are a number of things we did. Tara is going to mention one about the material. But one thing we could also do is, because we had such a large pool of students, is to just group pods based on the preferred languages. So we could not accommodate for everyone's choices, but that participant selected their preferences for language, and in the end we could form a group of 13 different languages, which I think, I mean, it's not something I heard of in other similar experiences. So that was one of the second action we did. And the third one was related to economic status, because summer schools, if you don't have if you're not waived, most people outside of the richest countries cannot pay for the high registration fees for the summer schools. So we try to adjust the registration fees to the economic status. Of course, we could not do this at the individual level, but we did at the country level. We struggled quite a bit to find a fair index for which to base our registration fees on. Basically, I mean, there's no perfect index, but we debated between 2 measures. One would be the median salary in the country. Another one would be a measure of the cost of living in the country. And I think Yota is going to.
And we, based on that, we realized, we did some data analysis and realized that the median salary is the most affordable for the students. And on top of that, we chose the least expensive, depending on the country of each students per case. And on top of that, the fee is waivable. So we are very happy that we could provide that. And that's, of course, based on the help we have from sponsors, which are necessary to be able to pay for the TAs. And lastly, the last point is, now that we have all this high diversity, we want to make good use of it. And one use, of course, of it is via the science and the learning and the projects and with the mentors, which it's a great way to interact. It's the main focus of the school, of course, but we can also take advantage of this opportunity and provide to the students the platform and the ways to interact in a fun social interactions beyond the school, and be able to get familiar and realize all this richness of cultures and backgrounds. And we try to do that. This is very challenging, actually, to do it online, and given this high intensity of the school and the high intensity of the school, and the overwhelming of the fatigue, the online fatigue. But we tried several activities, and we definitely need to think harder on that. But that's a great opportunity for the students, and we're happy we tried on that too.
Okay. Thank you, Yota and Alex. I hope everyone realizes that every bullet point here is hours and hours of work and discussion and meeting, and it's not just a bullet point. It wasn't easy. Okay, I'm gonna now hand the mic to Tara, who is gonna talk about videos. Tara?
Yeah, thanks, Mariam. I'm going to talk about making the YouTube videos accessible to a wide audience. And when we started the school, we did a preschool survey, and 39% of people that filled it out indicated that they would really like to have closed captions. And closed captions are basically subtitles to English language, to the spoken language, so that you can kind of read along with what people are saying. And if you go to the next part of the slide, then here you see some numbers that I extracted yesterday from YouTube. And they show that from the 24,000 hours people have been watching our channel, about 9,000 hours are watched with English captions on. So that is 37.5%. And I think this very well shows that if you go to the next part of the slides, surveys actually work pretty well. And yeah, it's really amazing to see that this helps so many people. Can you go to the next slide? However, when you talk about computational neuroscience, you also talk about a lot of jargon and eigennames when we are referring to people. So I wanted to share a couple of things that were kind of funny that stuck out. For example, a Purkinje neuron, which is a type of neuron in the brain, was translated to, or was captioned to refer to a kitchen neuron. And ethology became our theology. And more recently, Nathaniel Dahl was mentioned in the week 2, day 5 outro by Tim Behrens, and he was captioned as Nathaniel Dog. So of course, it's really important that actually someone goes over this to kind of adjust this. But that is such a timely effort, and I really want to emphasize how much time this has cost for volunteers, because if you go to the next part, manually editing actually takes 30 minutes for a 10-minute video. So another thing that we did when we did the manual captioning is to make sure that we're not trying to capture each and every word that a speaker is uttering, but really to improve the kind of the flow of the story, and to really help people that maybe have a little bit more difficulties and that don't have English, which I also don't have as their first language. So if you move on, I just really want to emphasize, I am not a religious person, but I've used this icon so many times on Slack because I think it's a really good way to show your gratitude. But I really want to highlight the people that contributed to this. And we also took a little bit of extra effort on YouTube to show our gratitude to people that contributed to this. And it was Carson Stringer, through some amazing leadership skills, pointing this out to me, like, hey, it would be really cool if we can include this. So now we include at the bottom of the description that we are really grateful to these people that have been contributing to these videos. So you can read that here in the bottom of that screen capture.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tara.
I still have more.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I'm almost done, I promise.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So one thing that we'll talk about a little bit tomorrow, if you follow the syllabus carefully, you'll see that you'll be confronted with some of us again tomorrow. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the technical aspect of it and how these videos actually came about. So if you're interested in that, please also join us tomorrow. And there we'll also talk more specifically about a process that we call waxing. And what that means, yeah, you gotta show up tomorrow to find that out. So after we actually put in the captions, I had some people on my team that were like still really into it and really wanted to offer more. And I think that is really a key aspect of Neuromatch Academy, to always strive for how we can do better. So if you progress, then you'll see that I really want to highlight here the efforts of Yuaki Go and of Doris Chow, who really stimulated us to add translations. And it's not always that we have the translations fully there for all the videos that are currently online, but this is also something that we really want to build upon after Neuromatch Academy is done, because these videos will stay online for people to watch and to come back to. So we're also really excited to try and to broaden that. So currently we have our focus on Mandarin, simplified Chinese, and on Spanish, but who knows what our possibilities are there. Thank you, Mariam.
Okay.
I will now pass it on to Patrick, or Mariam will do that for me.
Okay, thank you, Tara, and a shout out to all the editors and captioners and translators. It's a lot of hard work. Okay, next is Patrick Mineault, who's our Chief Technical Officer, who is going to talk about all the technical challenges. There's a lot of them.
Thank you, Mariam. So I just wanted to focus in on one aspect of this technical implementation. So we decided, as Alex and Yoda talked about, to adjust on medium income within a country, which created a rather complex structure in which there was 5 different groups of fees that one could be assigned to, depending on one's location. And so we knew that just unleashing this in a traditional fashion, with just emailing people the information for payment would turn into a nightmare of administration. So we invested in building a portal that essentially allowed people to pay for their fee in a way that would allow them to request a waiving and to do so automatically. And there was a lot of work actually on tweaking the language and to calibrate the amount of friction to ensure that things were inclusive, but also fair. So what do I mean by fairness is, if you're from an Ivy school, like an Ivy League school, and you're from a well-funded lab, we think that you should pay the fee. And that is and in some ways subsidize those students that cannot afford a full fee. So it was very important to strike that balance well. So we had over 90% of the students actually went through the payment portal, and the waive rate was about 16%, which is a tribute to both Alex's and Yoda's work in figuring out the exact structure for this. And we only had about, I think, 30 support emails, which is good because our admin staff is pretty skeletal at this point. Now, it does mean that we had to make some tough calls about what we were going to include here. So, for instance, we only accepted credit cards. We know that in countries with lower incomes, credit cards are not as common. On the other hand, our fees were essentially zero for 30% of students that were in low income countries. So we figured that this was an acceptable trade-off. And another aspect of this is that the portal didn't work in China. there's a lot of technical reasons why this couldn't happen. It turned out that we didn't charge any fees in China, so this was an acceptable trade-off. We did ask that people that weren't charged fees would still go through the portal to accept, but in the case of China, it just wasn't possible. And so the next slide is really going to focus on these technical issues that are necessary to deal with a different technical stack in China. So if you want to change the slide. Yeah, so China has essentially a separate internet. So many multinational corporations and also large universities like NYU Shanghai have official VPNs, which cost time and money to build. It was very difficult for us to be, as a lean and very new organization, to do such a thing. So we essentially worked around it by using a different technical stack. So many things that were familiar, in North America and Europe, like, all Google products don't work no Google products work in China, for instance. Facebook doesn't work in China. And Google has many products, like YouTube, for instance, doesn't work. Firebase doesn't work. So these are all products that we're used to that we couldn't use for this. So we had to replace essentially every component of it. So that means, for instance, to YouTube, we use Bilibili, which was led by Yuxi Guo, and which is linked to a national identity. So, the account holder is responsible. So we had to make sure that that the content was that we had looked at it beforehand. Then for notebooks, Colab isn't accessible in China. So what we did is we actually hosted all the notebooks on a Jupyter Hub, hosted in Aliyun, which is like kind of the equivalent of AWS or Google Cloud Services in China. Then for the live events, we were using Crowdcast and eventually turned over to a Zoom webinar. So for this here again, it was hosted on Bilibili. Which has a live streaming platform in addition to kind of a normal YouTube type video platform. For pod communication, Zoom doesn't work as well. So you can join Zoom rooms in China, but not create them. So we use DingTalk instead. And our bounce rates for emails, because you would think that email is such an old, medium, that it would work, but our bounce rate for email was on the order of 45 to 50% for both MailChimp and SendGrid, which was, a nightmare to deal with. So actually most of the communication was done through WeChat, which was this heroic effort by Sungting Lee. And so each of these components that were linked to, well-trodden, like well-known technology components has to be replaced wholesale. And we're talking about a student body that has about 200 people. It's an effort from a technical team that's led by Jeff Erlich and also Sungting Lee that is, they worked like day and night to make this happen. So there's about 10 people that are working just to make China happen. And I would be remiss not to talk about Jeff, because he's been pulling in like 40-hour weeks on top of his real job as a prophet at NYU Shanghai, on top of his young child as well, to make this happen. And we'll definitely do better next time, next year. But I think that it still made it for a good experience for people in China.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. So, well, next we're going to talk about Iran, and Elnaz is going to tell us all she did and all that happened with regard to our students and TAs in Iran. Elnaz, you have the mic.
Okay, yes, thank you. So Iran has a longer story. We'll have to make it so short here. So as we know, there are a lot of interested people from Iran, and this online course would make it more bold for them because of the visa issues and all the travel barriers for the students, that they can't go to the real life summer schools. So at the first of the beginning, we had a lot of interest shown from the applicants and the TA applicants, both of them. But my concerns was that, yes, the country is under heavy sanctions, so we have to be careful about it. So even though I checked some of the legal documents and we're like, okay, as long as we keep the money and all the financial transactions local, we're good. But, well, there are some Coursera courses and MIT courses that are also online, but still not available for Iranian people. Then let's check the material. Okay, yes, we are not doing anything sensitive, so we're fine. We're just doing basic science. We're good to go. And yeah, let's go again. But sometimes it's just catch you in a very, very, very wrong time. Just before, a week before the school, and with help of some lawyers, we realized that, oh, any service is banned for Iran. So education is also a service. And thank God we prevented a very, very terrible disasters for right on time, because we know the consequences of circumventing such sanction laws in the US is very, very severe for the organizers. So, well, sadly, all the students just all of a sudden got excluded within a 2-day notice, and they were just left around. What NMA did for them is that they applied for the emergency license, and surprisingly, it got through in 5 days, which usually takes like 6 months, sometimes a year, but it just took them 5 days, and we were happily able to got them back. But when did this happen? So on the Sunday, 12th of July, 10 p.m., we realized that we are able to get the students back. And it took us until 4 a.m., a team of, I don't know how many, because we were just coming online with the Zoom meeting, going back, take a rest, get back. And I remember Megan Peters even had to leave to do a Q&A live stream and come back to help, like, work after work nonstop to overcome how to get them back and not mess with all the organization we have done for the all students, and have everyone happy with the all potting system, because it was almost 4 hours before the all school starts for the Iran time zone, which we're in time zone 2. So, but after, when NMA board got through the whole legal license, we realized that, there's still some obstacles there. So the license said that we can pay students, in Iran, but with no money transaction involving Iranian bankings. And you're not allowed to get sponsors from Iran. We were already got one before we realized about all the exclusion things, because the notion was to keep the money transaction local in Iran. So we have an Iranian entity as a sponsors, but they can't use the money because that would be an interaction between NMA and Iranian entity as well. So I don't know how they point out that you can pay the Iranians, but no banking circulation, no entity. So how, excuse me? But we're still surprisingly figuring it out, and NMA is finding a way to pay the TAs. But the thing that I want to point out is that Iran was a country that had some representative in NMA organizing team like me and some other people that were working on coordination. But Iran is not the only country under the sanction of US, and there are a list of countries that we might know. And as Yoda and Alex said, that reaching out to those countries was even very difficult because the traditional way of communication doesn't work for them. But I know that there are some people even right now in the school that are not based in their country under the sanction, have moved out. But please reach out and help us to overcome all sanction things. And I'm so happy that Iran was had dealt with this, and we happily got them back. But this all taught us a lesson about that there are many countries under sanction. We have to take care of them. And we have to be very, very careful about all the legal barriers that happens every day in any countries, not only US, and most of the political, I don't know, conflicts that might be a barrier for overcoming this science events. So that's all I want to say, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elnaz. I hope what Yota and Alex and Patrick and Elnaz and everyone else have been telling you, you realize that every single small thing you want to do becomes like a huge task all of a sudden when you think about running a small university, actually. Okay, now I'm going to pass this to Beth, who is going to talk about how we did the community management and how we promoted diversity through that. Beth?
Great, thanks. Hi. So yeah, you can click to the next, Miriam. Thank you. So we are focusing, as Brad said at the beginning, not only on reaching out to people and getting them to come to Neuromatch Academy from underserved areas or marginalized groups, but we are focusing very intentionally on having your experience at Neuromatch Academy be as equitable as possible, which means not just inviting people to have seats at the table, that kind of analogy, but also focusing on having everyone have their voice be heard and taking into account the experiences that people are having that may cause them to, you know, have a great time or have a negative time, and addressing those in as quick and efficient a way as possible, being sensitive to the fact that we have 1,700 students and our pods are compromised and our projects are compromised of people from vast varying backgrounds and things like that. So next part, please, Miriam. So one way we do that is that from day one, we've been soliciting feedback from the students every single day. And we have questions about your comfort in your pod, your peer relationships, and other feedback for either your TA or your mentor. And you can see in the pie chart here, one of the examples is my pod peers and I are working well together. And the majority of students strongly agree. Another large part say they agree. And there are some people who disagree. And so if we see that there are people disagreeing, we have things that we do to talk to the TA and maybe stop in. Since everything is online and we have organizers in every time zone, we're able to drop into pods if we see that there is some issue. These surveys are anonymous within the pod, so we can see like which pod it is so that we can maybe intervene, but we don't know which student it is. So they can safely report things that are going on. Also, as far as accessibility, we use Neurostars as an online forum. A little bit from what Patrick was saying is we are able then to monitor the threads that people are using to talk about both the school, but also their experience with the school, share information about the social events. And I think going forward, you know, we'll think consciously about whether or not people like that form, or there are other ways to be able to check how people are interacting in an online medium. And as I said, we do pod visits, but we don't only do pod visits if we see things, if we think maybe something's going on in the pod. We also want to be very involved and see just how things are going and how people are interacting. Because sometimes people don't feel comfortable disclosing if they think there is an issue on the survey or in any situation. And so we have multiple ways that they can report, either anonymously or by giving their own personal contact information beyond the pod with code of conduct forms. We get emails, people reach out via Twitter, people reach out through TAs, and just knowing that we are keeping a pulse on it and trying to make sure that there are things that we can do to facilitate the TAs to help students who might be a little shy or might not feel like their voice is being heard and things like that, so that we have an inclusive and equitable community that we're working within. And also just want to point out that for the pod visits, those are great. And I just want to shout out that we have some volunteers who are not even involved in the community management side, who are helping us go into some of the 13, we have pods for 13 different languages, and not everyone on our team is fluent in, say, Mandarin and would be able to go in and talk to the students or the TA. And so very grateful to the people that we have who are willing to work with us and help those of us who are language deficient, as I will call myself, to help our students.
Okay, thank you, Beth, and thanks for all of the people who are actually making the school run smoothly right now and helping everyone to have a really nice experience at NMA. Okay, next I want to pass this to Megan, who's going to tell us about the future and what are we hoping to do for next year.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Miriam. Thanks all for being here. And I am just so blown away by the efforts of this community. But the point of this session is not to say we're great and we're wonderful and we have solved all of the problems, because we certainly haven't. And so part of my job now is to keep this going forward. And so, so one of the things that the executive committee and that the board of directors is going to be really focusing on starting like a week from now is what can we do for next year? Because this was all created over a period of like 3 months. And it really, we did a lot of things that are great, and we did a lot of things that are also like we can definitely improve. And so one of the things that we'd like to do, there's a lot of stuff on the slide here, but there are, one of the purposes of this session is to solicit feedback from all of you guys. So if you want to put some ideas in the Q&A as well, and we'll also be starting a thread on Neurostars to be like, how can we actually get this, how can we do even better in the future? And so here are some ideas that we have, and I'll briefly go through them. And then I hope that we can continue this conversation this coming week in August, and then all throughout the next year, so that Neuromatch Academy 2021 is even better. So the first thing that we're hopefully going to do is try to look into providing some scholarships and also sponsorships for some of our students. So waiving fees is wonderful and fantastic, and I think that helped promote access for a lot of students who wouldn't normally be able to participate in something like this. But a 3-week intensive 8-hour-a-day program means that you have to be able to do that. You have to either fit that in around a summer job or a full-time job in general. You have to fit that in around childcare. And so this means that there might even be like lost wages or a decision that you have to make between keeping your job and doing Neuromatch Academy and getting this educational experience. And so let's try to fix that. Let's think about, can we provide scholarships or sponsorships, or can we offer kind of a different structure also to maybe make this more accessible to people so they don't have to choose between Neuromatch Academy and their job. So that's one thing that we're thinking about doing. And going to start, and this isn't just thinking about this, by the way, this is stuff that we are going to actively look into just as soon as we get through Neuromatch Academy 2020. So the next thing that we're going to try to do is convert the tutorials maybe to other languages. And so while the captions have been a fantastic way of doing this and have taken so much time and effort, and Tara, thank you for spearheading that and for making that happen. This is huge. But English is not the only language in the world. And so if we can convert the tutorials to other languages, either through additional closed captions, which is a great way of doing this, or through other means, this would be fantastic and really expand our outreach as well. Making the curriculum more accessible to people from other backgrounds too. So coming up with different sets of prerequisites that might allow more people to participate. This is something that we're definitely looking into. So we curated pre-course materials, and there was actually an independently organized pre-course, a week 0 pre-course that happened as well. And so now that we have a full year ahead of us almost, we can start to develop ways to expand those pre-course materials and help people get the foundational knowledge that they need in order to really succeed in the course. So those are some kind of curricular or structural changes that we can make on the presentation side and the content side. But we can also do some stuff on kind of the more corporate and legal side as well. And so one of the things that we can do is we can apply for more licenses. So we were really lucky that the Iran license actually worked out. That was maybe not completely legally unprecedented, but very close. We were assured by our lawyers not to expect it this year. When we applied 5-6 days before the academy started. And then 5 days later, over a weekend, we had received the license, and that's fantastic. But let's do others, and let's do them with more than a 5-day runway, and we'll have hopefully a better chance of succeeding there as well, so that we don't have to onboard people in the middle of the night right before the school. And because that was fun, but let's not do that again. So another thing that we can do is we've talked an awful lot all through the school, even this year, about solutions for regions with poor internet access. So one of the biggest barriers to participation here has been access to stable internet that does live streaming well. And so even solutions like calling in via Zoom are not great because you can't live stream the videos. So we've talked about ways to ship the materials ahead of time, or to provide them to a local partner who can then make copies on USB keys of the videos and so on, so that there can be kind of local engagement that way. So you don't have to depend on video streaming all day, every day, 5 days a week in order to participate. So this is something, again, that we have actively talked about already a lot, and that we are very much looking into for next year as well. We can always do better, though, in other ways. So improving the targeting of outreach to underserved areas. I think that Brad spearheaded some really amazing and heroic efforts this year, and I'm extremely grateful for the care and attention that he gave to this, and the whole diversity crew as well, and just everybody who participated in that. It was really amazing to watch. And we're going to do better next year. And so this is one way, actually, that if you guys have ideas, you guys in the audience, you in the NMA community who have ideas for how we can reach out to regions, underserved areas, underserved populations, countries that we didn't reach effectively this year, please tell us. Do you have connections that you can leverage and help us reach those places? We really would like to hear from you. So that's one way that we definitely need your help, and we welcome your help and support. So just a couple more things. I know I'm kind of rambling on here, but another thing that we spent a lot of time on actually this year, in addition to the closed captions, which was a huge amount of time and effort, is we early on spoke also with student disability services here at my home university, which is University of California, Irvine, about ways that we can better accommodate students who have visual or auditory impairments. And so screen readers is something that we've talked about, making sure, just as a simple thing to go forward, making sure that we don't use red and green in the same slide, so we're sensitive to colorblind people. Those are things that are definitely on the list, and some of these are much easier than others to do, but we are looking into them. And so again, if you guys have ideas of services or software or approaches that work for you, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your experiences that work for you. And then just a couple other things that are on our list right now. Of course, we always want to further improve diversity in our panels, in our hosting as well, and in all of the instructors. We worked really hard on this year. And I think that, as evidenced by the slides that we showed earlier, we did a pretty good job, but we can always improve. We can always do better at this. And one of the things that's made this very difficult, of course, this year is that COVID happened, and a lot of people have childcare that they have to deal with, and other difficulties to and barriers to participation. And these do tend to fall a little bit more on women. This has been published about now. So we need to do a better job of reaching out and including women and underrepresented minority scientists, not just here in the United States, of course, but all around the world, to really represent the heterogeneity and diversity of this scientific community. And the last thing then that I'll say is online social stuff and online fatigue is hard. So we're all sitting, and you are now sitting again in front of your computer watching us stream video. And I've spent more time sitting in front of my computer screen during COVID-19 and during Neuromatch Academy than I think I ever did before. And that's saying something, because my job is to sit in front of a computer screen. But what we tried to do this year is improve some social interactions and reduce some online fatigue. And I think that going forward, we will try very hard to do a better job at this, to promote activities that don't involve sitting in front of screens, and to encourage people to kind of get out into the world, hopefully once COVID is also over and we are allowed to go out into the world and do things. So these are some things that we are working on, but this is a partial list. And so what I would like to impress on all of you now is the need for you to give us your feedback, your ideas. And so we will be starting a thread on Neurostars, but we also welcome your feedback in any other form of communication that you want to provide. Please tell us what we can do better. Tell us how we can do those things better. And if you want to get involved, tell us how you want to get involved. We are really wanting to do this increasingly better over and over for the next years. So thanks very much for listening to me prattle on here. And so actually now this is a great time. We've got a little bit of time to do some comments. We've got some questions in the Q&A, but also put some comments there and put them in the chat, and then we'll get the conversation going.
Okay, thank you, Megan. I'm gonna stop sharing because for some reason I can't see any of the questions when I'm sharing. Oh. Okay, good. We have some good question here. I'm gonna go. Interesting. Different sciences have different disparities, and quantitative disciplines tend to have higher gender imbalances. What can we do to improve that culture? Who wants to take this on?
Can I go first?
Yeah, sure.
So this is kind of a standard answer, but I think it's also a really important one, and is something that we are already trying to do here, and that I hope we will continue to do going forward, which is by working really hard to actively put underrepresented minority scientists in the limelight, to highlight them, to give them the opportunity to interact with students and mentors, and to demonstrate the diversity of what the scientific community looks like. We help create role models for younger scientists to be able to look up to somebody who has a similar background or expertise or experience as you have, or also that isn't your background or your expertise or your perspective. This is one of the most concrete ways I think that we can do that, is to create role models and to help support those role models in a really active and kind of pushy way. And so I think that we should do that. It's a standard answer, but I truly believe that it is one of the ways that we can make a difference.
Okay, that's Yora, go ahead.
I just thought that we can also maybe highlight the departments and the places that they do have high diversity, as the Bioswatch Neuro does now. And by the way, I want to shout out in every opportunity I have, I do that for Azerbaijan and the Department of Physics of Kazar University, that they have the highest percentage of female professor in physics I have ever seen. And they put the glasses on every one of us. They have like 50%, few, but 50%. So we can use this platform to highlight and applaud this and encourage it. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going. Beth, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, jump in,
I was
everyone.
just going to,
yeah.
yeah. I was just going to say from the community standpoint, it's great to see role models, but if you face things like we've had people who have had to, stop their involvement, especially because of childcare, and they've all been women. And so one of the things that is great about NMA is that, we are compensating TAs, and that is something that within the larger, because Zach's question, I think, was science in general. So many things rely on like informal internships or, working on a publication with someone that you don't get your time compensated for. And so if you have a lot of outside commitments, especially care work, which falls more heavily on women, that's one thing that I really appreciate about this, is that we are actually compensating people for the work that they're doing, and hopefully students have some flexibility from their TAs and stuff if they have things that they need to take care of. So.
Okay. So yes, Patrick.
So I'd like to point out that I think 45% of our student body identifies as female, which is much higher than what you would see in terms of professorships and neuroscience departments. And actually at the Leaky Pipeline, we see it ourselves. So if we look at the difference between who signed up for the mentor lists, who signed up for TAs, and who signed up for students, we see very clear evidence of this Leaky Pipeline. And one of the opportunities that we have for next year is to take those students which have gone through the course and allow them and empower them to be TAs next year. And in this way, patch up this leaky pipeline problem. And of course, that gives people a chance to have the figures of authority as much as a TA can be a figure of authority represented. So it's an opportunity for next year, and hopefully we'll see TAs get professorships. We already have 2 people that have been in NMA that have taken faculty positions, and they're both women during these 3 months. So.
Okay, this is an interesting question. Is there a way to find student TAs from specific countries to connect with? I like that question. I don't know who can answer that. I think it's more of a networking question, but very region specific. Jota.
Yeah, this fits within the idea of having offline activities and combine both the global interactions that we have been mainly focusing now, but also with the local, and the local more in the physical aspect. So, and this can solve several problems, like maybe the internet, the poor internet, so that students from within the same city or country can help each other and can come together and create local communities and with the TAs. So we can definitely, we have thought of that, and it is for the future to think more thoroughly on that.
Megan.
I think Elnaz had her hand up first, actually.
Oh, sorry, Elnaz.
No?
Well, for my experience, that was, partially working with Alex and Yoda about how to outreach to people that are not as active in the traditional ways. It works to find some people local, and how that makes it happen is to find some people that are already in the community and have some networks in local places. And I think Athena also made a lot of effort how to find African and Palestinian students in the same way, finding some connections that are placed in the local places and they also have some connections outside. And that is how it works to just go for the chain of the network.
Yeah, Megan, now. Yeah.
Elnaz, I'm really glad that you went first, actually, because that's a perfect lead into what I was going to say, which is exactly that. But this is also like, can I please make a plea to the Neuromatch Academy community, broadly speaking, the TAs and the students, because we've got connections and we can lean on those connections, but now you are part of this family too. And if you liked Neuromatch Academy and you think that this is a fun thing to do, even if it's really super exhausting, tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell your professors, tell your parents, tell everybody, because that network, if we build that network, that will help us be successful. And so while we have some of those networks now, and we did, there were some extremely heroic efforts by Athena and many others to reach out to these networks this year, our networks are limited. And if you help us grow them, then they will get bigger. So please help us.
And I also have, I don't actually know this. Is it possible in Neurostars or some other place to search for country of origin or language and things like that? I think that's like one way of practically doing this, something to think about for future maybe. Yeah, to just actually have a database of all students and TAs and like people can search those databases. That might actually be one way of promoting this, right?
Can I follow up on that, actually? So one of the things that we are hoping to do towards the end of the school is do some individual matching between our interactive students. And so this will help you grow your network as well, outside your pod, outside your super pod, outside your group project. And so then talk about where you guys are all from and how you can promote this networking together. So please do that. That would be good.
Okay, the next question I'll pass to Tara. Can I, as a student fluent in 2 languages, help with closed captioning?
Yeah, 100%.
You have a volunteer.
Yeah, that is great. So I think a lot of these efforts actually have been going through Twitter, which is kind of funny, right? Because, yeah, I think a lot of volunteers come in through Konrad Kording because he has a large following on Twitter. But you can always email me or send me a personal message on Twitter. My DMs are open, so you can reach me that way. And I think one of the things that we're starting to think about now is how we're going to offer additional translations to Spanish and Mandarin that we've been working on so far, because this is something that we really want to offer. So yeah, I'm like actively working on getting a pipeline where we can roll these things out through community contributions on YouTube. Brad, you want to say something?
And something else that we haven't even started yet is thinking about translating the tutorial text as well.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of English language there.
Yeah, and there maybe there can be software for online translation for during the free ride talking like now. So there is a lot of improvement on that for sure.
I actually really like the next question. It's a tough one. It's great that NMA has this diverse group of people, but this is a result by design for almost any online course. You mentioned they're being pushed out through their career. What would you suggest to do to address this hidden bias for the PIs and institutions? That is a good question, a tough one. Who wants to take that?
Brad, you go. I've been talking a lot.
Brad.
I mean, this is a problem that is sort of beyond the scope of the NMA specifically in terms of solving it worldwide, because it needs to address how people are promoted. It needs to address how reviews are assigned, how committees are assigned. So there's just like a tremendous amount of heavy lifting that needs to occur simultaneously across all of the departments, and also in changing the opinions and the mindsets of people. So it's extremely difficult to do this. There are a lot of efforts to do so, but I guess I would say that there is no simple solution apart from working very hard to try to bring awareness to these issues. You know, like I think in some cases there are solutions that provide a surprisingly rapid effect. Like Bias Watch Neuro is a great example, right? Basically, they just collected statistics, and then whenever a conference failed to live up to a certain baseline percentage of women involvement, they broadcast that fact. And that sort of name and shame approach, if you will, was actually very effective in getting people to pay attention. So, I mean, that's one example of how a really clever idea, you know, made some progress. But of course, that's nowhere close to getting us, like, we do not want shaming to be the primary motivation that people use to address this, right? Like that's like the bare minimum of what we want. So yeah, it's just a tremendous effort that needs to be done across the board throughout all of our institutions.
Yoda, Megan, go, whichever, doesn't matter.
I think I just want to mention that the online course, we have a good, it's a great opportunity to be more careful and more focused on the content and of what is going out there, because there is all this diversity across countries, and we are more alert in identifying our own implicit biases that they are deeply built in us, being immersed into the academic environment that it's full of those. But now we have a position, a stand, a little bit more observative, and that helps. So people who are involved in NMA and go through this process, they realize themselves. So this is an indirect way that we change ourselves and those involved.
Okay, Megan?
Yeah, just very quick. I think that I want to address two things in this question. The first is that this idea that it's by design for almost any online course is diversity. I think that in the student body and the student population, people who sign up for it, maybe that, you know, like, yes, it's available worldwide and that kind of thing. But I don't think that in terms of the content that's produced by the course, the lecturers, the people who are actively, in our case, giving their time as mentors, we designed NMA that way, but I don't think that that's the default. And I think that by paying attention to it more, it should become the default. And I agree with you there, but I think we're not quite there yet. I'm hopeful that we will get there. And that online courses and online communities do have a really powerful opportunity here to leverage the diversity and heterogeneity that we can get in the scientific community and put it all in one place without geographical restriction. And that's fantastic. And we should use that. This is one way in which online courses actually might be better than in-person things, because we can draw from that diverse population. But we still got to pay attention to it. It's not going to happen automatically. And then the other thing that we can do, not just at NMA, because it's not really a formal university. We might look like one, but we're actually not a university. But the other thing that departments and companies too, so this isn't just necessarily in academia, but also in industry, that they can do is we can pay attention to the metrics that we're using to give merit and promotion. And we can make sure that those metrics that we are using to measure quality contributions to the field are not biased against certain groups. And so I see this, you know, this session here is coming on the tails of our open science session, which I think provides a really concrete way in which to do this, is that publication in a high impact journal in an academic sense should not be the only way that we measure our quality, the quality of our contribution as scientists. And so data sharing and open data practices, and not just relegating things like service to diversity and inclusion to like, oh, that's the service category of your dossier. I think that these are structural changes that can be made in departments and universities and in companies too, to pay attention to the metrics that are being used to make decisions about merit and promotion. And so these are really concrete ways, and I really encourage you guys to go and talk with your PIs and your departments and your institutions about ways that we can make these changes at the institutional level.
I want to also kind of add quick note about the more I move on in my career, the more I realize that how much networking matters. And I'm going to point out to the match part of NeuroMatch. And I think built in NeuroMatch, there is this spirit of matching and connecting people, which is not part of a lot of online courses. You just take the course and go. And I think this whole pod structure that has been built, it's going to help a lot with connecting people and promoting people, giving people confidence that is going to translate into a less leaky pipeline, I think, hopefully. Yeah. So next question, can we do a contact, this is a technical question, can we do a contact thread on Neurostars or any other way so that people can know each other and keep in touch for upcoming projects or revisiting the material, also to stay in touch to help with the next iteration of NMA? Maybe that's a Patrick question, I don't know.
Yes. You can.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you just need to start a thread. There's a interactive social that would be probably the right venue for this. And if you feel, I know that the Neurostars can be overwhelming. If you feel shy and you would prefer that we start a thread for you, we can also do that. And I'm sure that Yoda would be happy to help me out start that thread. But we do want to encourage people to connect offline and in other ways.
Yes, Yoda, you should have a lot to say about this too.
Yes, that's a good idea, and we can think about that. Yes, I don't have something specific to say now, but we will take that into account and see if we can manage to do that before the end. Would be great.
Okay. And we have Aina on board too. Hello. So are there any past courses, events, or organizations that inspired NMA approach to inclusivity and diversity? I don't know the answer to that. Anybody? Was it just COVID?
Well, we are inspirational. We are we are unique. No, that's not true.
Let me just dip in on that one, because you are inspirational. And it follows on from what other organizations are doing as well. But I think this organization, NeuroMatch Academy, has taken it into the stratosphere. I work very closely with Organization for Human Brain Mapping. I'm the council chair there, and we have diversity initiatives. But this one that NMA has is on steroids, and it's incredibly wonderful to watch. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yoda?
I just want to mention that maybe it is the first time I'm working, I'm involved in something that there are so many women and I have to work because I'm used to be among men as a woman from physics and computational neuroscience. So that has been like a great experience, and I'm very happy. For me, is a new thing. Of course, it's the idea of diversity. It's been for years now. People are talking, and there are many actions, and it's building up. And it's not like we first thought about it, but it's a big step forward. For me personally, it's the first time I'm in such an environment, diverse environment.
Brad?
Just to also give a little bit of historical perspective. So the name NeuroMatch actually comes from a process that was started by Conrad Korting, T.D. Atchikol-Visit, and Dan Goodman, who were basically designing an algorithm to group people together based on common interests. And so they ran this at the CCN conference in 2018, 2019. We also ran 2 conferences based on this algorithm in March and May of this year. So that was sort of the direct predecessor of at least the process of bringing people together. And so, but that was for, very short-term things like conferences, whereas this now we're basically trying to expand that out to the entire globe. And so that's just the sort of historical perspective.
Megan?
So I think I want to take this opportunity to say that, while I was kind of joking and we're like the first and, yay, we're inspirational and everything. I think the real thing that I want to highlight with that is that we are an extremely new organization. We just happened. We just built this. And it's a lot easier to do this closer to doing it right when you get to build something from scratch, when you want to try to change the direction of an existing, like shifting the trajectory of the Titanic is very difficult. And that's what we're talking about doing for a lot of these, I mean, the established everything. Neuromatch Academy had the luxury of getting to pay attention to this as we were building this from the ground up, starting with a conversation that happened in like April. And so this is a luxury that we had, that we were able to do this from the beginning and to pay attention to it from the beginning. And our work in doing this in established organizations and established industries is much harder. So we should recognize that this is a win here, but that we've got a lot of work ahead of us outside of Neuromatch Academy as well.
Okay, I think the next one is a managed community question, Beth. It's really great to have this daily feedback from students. I'm really curious about the challenging process of reaching out to potentially problematic groups. These are small groups, probably it's not really anonymous. Who's disclosed not feeling comfortable? How has this been working out? Is there any official NMA policy? Beth and Aina, maybe, yeah.
I knew that was going to go to Beth.
Yeah.
Well, some of you know my face because I've Zoom bombed you, and what I've told you is that I'm doing drop-ins, random drop-ins, which is what I'm trying to do, and that includes pods that are functioning well, and maybe sometimes there are some issues with pods. Look, you don't know each other. You're getting to know each other. Working on projects and doing this stuff is hard. It's hard enough when you've got experience and in science, and so this is really tough. So we expect that there are going to be problems, that things aren't going to work out, and that is perfectly fine. The thing is that we can work on it and we can improve things and we can fix things. And honestly, I'm actually astounded. Now, I shouldn't say this because we've got 1 week left, but I'm actually astounded how few issues we've really had. And the issues we've had, we've been able to sort out. And, every pod's different. Every TA is different. Every person, every student in Neuromatch Academy has different needs, has different knowledge bases. So every time you go in and do a pod visit, you have no idea what's going to happen. And that, for me, I call it pod diving. I love it because I never know what's going to happen. So that's how I try and deal with it. Then I report back to Beth and Kate Bonin, and we have a meeting once a day. And we do a pod temperature check every day. It takes us a while because we're learning what to do and what not to do for next year. So next year probably won't take us quite as long. This year it's taken long. People from the organisers are dropping in as well because they're welcome to come in and see how we do things because we're transparent. And then that takes a bit longer because then we have to tell them what we're up to so that they understand that. So that's what happens. So we are listening to you and we're hearing you, and we're hearing you through, I'm getting direct messages on Twitter, I'm getting emails, we're getting stuff through Neurostars, we're getting stuff on TA Slack. There's lots of avenues, and of course your daily reflections, which you have to fill out to help us. Okay, so thank you for that.
Okay, Beth?
Yeah, I will say thank you to Aina for being the one to jump into these groups because she loves it, and I love that I don't make the time for it, don't have to try and squeeze it in, but she's invaluable for it. But addressing the question, so I come from a sociology, survey, research methodology background. I want to explain that. And so these are anonymous within pods. And I think that it's really important to say like how removed the data is that we look at when we have our daily meetings and people drop in and out, that literally all we have is a pod number. We don't have the names of people in the pods. We don't have any of the information about the people in the pods other than the TA, just so that we can then go look up their email and things. So in the case of these daily surveys, all we have is numbers and pod numbers. We have no idea. And so it is anonymous to the extent that it can be. When it becomes not anonymous is if there is like a code of conduct thing. And one of the things about Neuromatch Academy that I love is the big focus on kind of respectful debate, learning to work within groups. It's tough. I understand that. And so we get some growing pains possibly, but if there are things where people want to report, totally anonymously, they can, but then we can't do anything about it is the only issue in that question. But if they report with their pod number or their name or something like that on the code of conduct, we can and we have reached out to people and TAs to figure out what's going on. And so while every pod is different and there are growing pains, I think the one thing is that we want to stress respectful debate is good. Being frustrated with learning is okay. Taking that frustration out on your pod members and getting into fights is not okay. And the amazing thing is that we haven't seen that. To me, as who has taught online a lot and just seeing people go after each other on message boards, maybe it's because people are face to face and not behind the computer, but it's actually been, we do have things that we are doing and can do if we see a problem, but there's been remarkably small amount of problems, which is awesome. And kudos to all of the students for really taking this seriously and taking their pod members seriously and, recognizing that everybody's going through something right now. I haven't left my house in like 6 months, guys. I'm in Houston. Like everybody's going through something. And so just love it. Love this community. And we will still be here to help if you need it, for sure. Oh, you're muted, Miriam.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Theodoni.
I just wanted to make a comment at the broader sense. Apart from the individual and the problems, we're definitely listening and trying to get the vibe and what's happening and the reactions from the students, as Aina said, from Neurostars and others, and try to adapt dynamically. It's a dynamic process, like we did, for example, with the yoga. It's not working. Let's take a poll, where would it be better, or with the Mozilla hubs. And so because we are trying now, it's new, we and even for the curriculum and everything, so we are trying to find ways to get feedback. And because as one student said, again, another line I loved is it's a community, and the community needs everybody's voice. So students are active members, and they have an active role in shaping the school the best way possible.
Okay, Megan?
And on that note, I know that we're running out of time here,
Yes,
but
yeah.
we will have surveys at the end and the opportunity to do an interview at the end if you want to do that. And so if you have feedback about your experience as a Neuromatch Academy student, or ways that you think that we can improve student experience and student cohesion and the feedback process throughout the school, so we can do this pod temperature taking and pod diving better next year, please tell us. We want to hear your voices. As Jota said, everybody's voice is important here, and we want to hear everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Beth, you have
And can I throw one thing in on, because that just made me realize something I wanted to correct with Aina. If you do get a visit from an organizer, it's not because you're in trouble. Sorry, when I was listening, right. I was like, wait, this sounds like we're only, I also set up a huge schedule because the organizers just want to see what you're doing. Like we are stuck behind our computer screens looking at spreadsheets or talking on Zoom 50 times a day like Megan. We don't get to spend time with students. And so people are dropping in, you're not in trouble. So if you see anybody, don't be startled.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
Yeah,
that's the fun
exactly.
part.
Okay, as much as I'd like to continue this forever, we kind of have to wrap up. I've saved all of the questions and all the wonderful comments you've made. Please reach out to us. Please talk to us if you have suggestions, questions. We are on Neurostars, emails, anything that any way that you can reach us. I just want to wrap up that actually talking about diversity is easy. Making it happen is incredibly hard. We've made some effort. It's not complete. There's going to be more work to do, but also it's incredibly rewarding. It's just so much fun to see the students and TAs come together, and like I've visited pods. It's just really enjoyable to see all of you guys learn and interact and talk and chat science. And hopefully this will continue forever, and the material is online and you can enjoy. And thank you for all the panelists for this wonderful panel, and thank you all of you for listening. I guess this is it. Bye-bye.